Welcome back to the Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, the show that normally brings you guys into the studio to talk about football. However, it's a little bit different today because we're doing a Football Daily version of the best awards that happened on Monday. We're going to go through the nominations and the winners and say whether we agree or disagree and who should have won it instead. Joining me today, Joe Tomlinson, Henry Hill. You know who they are. Let's move on because the winner of the Men's Best Player Award was Lionel Messi. Now, obviously, he went on this season to win Ligue 1, or last season, 2022, Ligue 1, and the big one, the World Cup. He scored 27 goals in 49 games for club and country during last season, and he also scored 2 in the World Cup final and helped his team win on penalties. Now, at club level as well, we mentioned he won the Ligue 1 title. Joe, are you in agreement with Lionel Messi winning the best award? Obviously, there were other nominations as well for Kylian Mbappe, his teammate, and Karim Benzema, who won the Ballon d'Or, obviously, a couple of months ago.
Isn't that comical? Isn't that absolutely comical? Lionel Messi didn't even make the top 30 list in August when the Ballon d'Or was awarded. Absolutely hilarious. Makes a total mockery of the Ballon d'Or. But yeah, he absolutely should have won the best award, in my opinion. We've never seen performance like it at a World Cup from an individual. Obviously, his goal-scoring run he went on throughout the group stage, round of 16, quarter-final, semi-final, final, unprecedented. Took home the Golden Ball, unsurprisingly. The best player at the World Cup, dragged Argentina through games. You think back to that Australia game, sensational. For PSG last season, not amazing, but still very, very solid numbers. In fact, such solid numbers that we almost take them for granted at this stage. You know, won Liga, won the World Cup. I think he was going up as good of a goal per game in 2022. I think it was 79 goals and assists in 74 games. Extremely impressive. We just kind of go, oh yeah, it's Messi again, isn't it? Because he does it so often. But I think the fact he won the World Cup cements his place as the GOAT of the game. And for that reason, he had to win the Best Player award.
And obviously this competition looks at it rather than season, more so as the
2022.
year for 2022, right? And you did mention last season, maybe didn't get off to the best of starts. No. But this season, in 2022, he had a decent little time, didn't he, Henry?
Yeah, he did. But I mean, I think if you look over the course of the whole year, I think Mbappe probably deserved to be named the best player. I think over the last 12 months, he has been the best footballer in the world. I completely agree with you, what you're saying about Messi. Cemented his status, greatest of all time. What he did at the World Cup was pretty astounding. In what was probably a worse team than the team that Mbappe got to play around.
Oh, definitely.
Still, but what Mbappe did
about it.
Still, what Mbappe did at the World Cup was pretty remarkable too. I mean, scored 8 goals, get 2 assists, got 5 in qualifying. He hit 28 goals last season in Ligue 1 and got 17 assists. I appreciate we're not cutting it off from January. But then he's got 17 this season with 3 assists too. I think only Balogun in Ligue 1 is ahead of him. And it's undeniable the impact he makes when he's on the pitch at the moment. We saw that when he came off at 60% when he came onto the pitch against Bayern Munich recently. What he did in that World Cup final, I think his goal's nominated for a Puskas.
How do you say it?
Puskas.
Puskas.
But yeah, you can't deny that Mbappe, for all the fuss that was made over his contract, for all the drama associated with him, he is living up to the hype. He is everything. And I think across the last 12 months, he was the best player. He's just being hamstrung by the fact that PSG didn't win the Champions League because he was this close to winning the World Cup.
If PSG won the Champions League, Lionel Messi would have won the Champions League.
Yeah, but
you say this close.
Messi wasn't that good for the PSG last season, even towards the back end of the campaign.
You say, but by his own exceedingly high standards, and I admit Kylian Mbappe is the rising star, and if you could select one player to play in a game for you tomorrow, you would probably take Mbappe over Messi.
Okay, there you go.
But the fact that he actually got the job done and won the World Cup and lifted to cement the legacy means he has to take home the best award.
Mbappe scored the most goals in 2022, 56 goals in all competitions, 18 assists as well. We'll also have a stat come up right now with the voting and how that worked, because Messi, when you look at the votes, kind of had a bit of a landslide victory. Obviously, it's voted by captains, coaches, the media and fans, and obviously they are then represented through points as well. I think the fans actually doesn't carry as many points as obviously the professionals, which kind of makes sense to a degree. I think It's interesting. I always find with award shows, it isn't really a fair look at the whole year. I think very much it's looked at.
It's a popularity contest, mate.
I also think there's a lot of recency bias in it, right? It's a lot of what happened at the World Cup, which is only 1 month of football in 12.
And you've got to remember, this is a FIFA awards ceremony. FIFA's the best. They are going to award it based on FIFA-led tournaments,
World
not
Cup,
things like the Champions League, which is a UEFA-led tournament. So they are going to go for World Cup.
But I think, I don't know, I think Messi kind of edges it for me as well with
said,
that
Matt.
World Cup. But I think because when you look at the votes,
Coward.
when you look at the votes, it looks like a landslide for Messi. I don't think it's a landslide victory at all. Now, the best women's player was won by Barcelona's Alexia Putellas.
Beth Mead robbed.
Beth Mead does seem like she was robbed. I mean, Putellas was injured for a majority of the season. She missed out on the Euros and still went, obviously, to go and win it. Beth Mead is now injured, but wasn't during the majority of the season. Bit of crazy, right?
I appreciate that Arsenal women's haven't had the rub of the green in the Champions League recently, and Barcelona have been super impressive in that competition. But yeah, Beth Mead, best player at the Euros, an unbelievable result, scoring goals again for Arsenal this season in the Women's Super League, which is stepping out as one of the best women's divisions by a country mile, certainly in Europe, if not world football. So yeah, I think Beth Mead's super unlucky not to get the nod on that once again. What else could she really do in the games that she was given? And Putellas, don't get me wrong, if she's having a fit season, she is amazing. But Beth Mead really deserved this one.
Okay, I think we're all agreeing with Beth Mead deserved the best women's player. Let's move on to the best men's goalkeeper, because this is where things get a little bit interesting, especially when we look at the team after this or later on. The best men's goalkeeper was won by Emiliano Martinez. Now, obviously, he helped his country to the World Cup for Argentina, saving 4 penalties along the way, including in the shootout against France. What do you make of this, Jay?
I mean, if we're basing it on the World Cup, then it probably has to be Emmy.
There's already an award for that.
I know, and he's won the Golden Glove, hasn't he? But he did effectively, the save from Randall Colomani effectively does win them the tournament, doesn't it? And the penalty saves against the Netherlands and in the final, it effectively does win the tournament for them. But if I could have picked one keeper to have in 2022, I probably would have taken Courtois.
Yep.
You think back to, we talk about the heroics from Emi Martinez in that final, saving from Colomani. Think back to the saves that Courtois made in that Champions League final. I think he made 9.
A run as well throughout.
Yeah, but in the final in particular, where he made 9 saves, I think it's the most any goalkeeper has made in the history of the Champions League final. He single-handedly kept an extraordinary Liverpool side at bay, effectively. A Liverpool side that were baying for blood in a quadruple race. Without him, but Real Madrid would have lost that game. Yeah, I know Benzema was sensational and the midfield was great, but Courtois was a one-man army in that final. I don't know. I still feel like the best goalkeeper in the world is Alisson. But I feel like best 2022 is probably Courtois, and Emi Martinez had the best World Cup, so they were obviously going to end up giving it to Martinez.
Are you in agreement? Do you think it should have been Thibaut Courtois? Or even, do you think Alisson was probably ahead of Martinez?
No, I don't think Alisson gets to be involved in this conversation because
the World Cup was so poor for him.
Yeah.
Oh, respect the Carabao, man. Respect the Carabao they picked up last year, and we picked up this year.
No, Courtois, I think Courtois, the impact he had on that Real Madrid side is unbelievable. And I think his numbers are often disregarded, which is quite unfair really to him sometimes. I mean, if you look at, I know post-shot XG, people get funny about it, but really he has bailed Real Madrid out year after year after year. I mean, 4 seasons in a row now that at least +4 post-shot XG, which means that he's basically going above and beyond for his side. So yeah, he is disrespected. A lot of is made about his inability of his feet, whatever. But I think he's right to feel slightly aggrieved, and certainly in this situation, Emiliano Martinez, outside of this World Cup, has not been particularly outstanding for Aston Villa. So yeah, funny one for me.
Indeed. Okay then, let's move on to the men's coach of the year, Lionel Scaloni, the Argentina
it's
manager.
World Cup weighted, isn't it?
Indeed, it does feel like it, especially at least the individual awards. This is why I wanted to make sure we have this discussion, because I think this is where it could be a little bit more open to who else could have got it. Pep Guardiola could have been an option. Carlo Ancelotti, who won La Liga, Supercopa, UCL, Super Cup, the Club World Cup. Obviously, that was more this year rather than last year. Stefan Pioli winning with AC Milan, Jurgen Klopp, the FA Cup, the League Cup, as Joe mentions how important of a trophy that is right now.
Eredivisie.
Now,
The
Eredivisie, yeah, I mean, Erik ten Hag, I don't think entered this one just yet. Maybe for this year, could be quite a possibility, to be quite honest. But for me, I think Carlo was the big one here, Henry. Do you think he should have maybe edged it?
Yeah, I actually go with Scaloni on this one in a weird way. I just think to turn that squad around, and the fact they lost to Saudi Arabia and had that added weight of pressure on them, it comes from him as well to calm that squad down, to figure out a system to get the best out of Messi. Because as we said, that squad it's not a world-beating side. Like McAllister had a good start.
But you didn't have Messi as the best award.
No,
He dragged the team past.
In this situation, I just feel like Scaloni to go in on his first sort of senior job as management, everything he's done, for that to lead into a World Cup final, the weight of Argentina kind of on his shoulders. I know what you're saying, but I was less impressed by the other achievements. Because winning La Liga, winning the Supercopa last year in a season when Barcelona were cut adrift, Atletico Madrid not really involved in the conversation at all at the moment. I get the Champions League is pretty epic.
All of England's best teams.
I still think Scaloni. I'm not against Carlo, but I'm happy for Scaloni to take this one because I do think. Fair play.
Carlo for me. I love Carlo Ancelotti.
I love him too.
But I just think a fourth Champions League title, and it was the manner and the difficulty level of the run to the final, to beat Man City, to beat Chelsea under Tuchel, to beat Jurgen Klopp. Absolutely ridiculously hard run. Probably the hardest run they could have put up in terms of fixtures.
It felt like in every game, everyone was like, well, they'll get knocked out in this one.
Yeah.
Or they'll get knocked out in this one. They'll get knocked out in the final.
And people say, it's easy to manage a group of, experienced winners. I think it's even harder to manage a group of experienced winners that basically run their own dressing room. You have to be such a perfect man manager all of the time. His tactical nous when it comes to big games, Carlo, is effectively unmatched in world football. On the European stage, anyway, it definitely is right now. For me, to win a fourth Champions League, regain La Liga, and kind of not overthrow Barcelona because they're obviously in the mud at the moment financially, and they're finally bouncing back a bit under Xavi now. But I just think that Carlo, for me, had to win it. Four titles in the year.
Maybe it was this season part of it that kind of ruined it for him slightly, but there we have it.
We say this season they've just rocked Liverpool. I know it's 2023, but they've just rocked Liverpool 5.
2023 doesn't count, mate. 2023 doesn't count.
Scaloni, here we go.
Scaloni is the one there. Let us know what you guys think as well. Who would have won it in your nominations if they were picked? Okay, let's move on to the team of the year. Now this is where I think things get a little bit interesting because our selection for goalkeeper of the year, Courtois, is in the FIFA Pro.
Can we talk
Men's
first and
World
foremost
11.
though about the formation? How have they gone for a 3-3-4? They've gone for a 3-3-4 with two fullbacks.
They've tried to just fit. They didn't want to take one of the forwards out basically. But yeah, it'll be on the screen right now as you can see right here. We can't obviously go through every single one. We'll go through the ones that I think are probably the biggest talking points. Joe, you weren't a big fan of Van Dijk.
Well, I am a big fan of Van Dijk, but I'm not a big fan of his 2022 necessarily to get in to the best team. I do think there's a real dearth of centre-backs that had really standout campaigns. You even think of that Argentina side and you think, Otamendi, not too sure, Couto Romero, he's been amazing for Argentina, but for Tottenham, top 4 finish, it is what it is. Sandro Martinez has been very effective for United, but didn't really get an awful lot of game time at Argentina for the World Cup. Van Dijk, very impressive, you'd have to say, but didn't get over the line in big moments. Like
finals.
He was 180 minutes away from winning a quadruple, and it ended up with a League Cup and an FA Cup. And then the Dutch were pretty average defensively at the World Cup, even though they got to where they got to. The defence,
who would you have had instead? Someone like Eder Militao?
I don't know, because I think Brazil were massively underwhelming as well at the World Cup, and we've got to take that into account, haven't we? I think the defence is a really, really hard selection. You'd like to take an Argentinian defender, but they weren't necessarily good enough domestically. On the international stage, they were amazing, but
that's where
I really struggled with the centre-back. I don't know whether you guys have got any better suggestions. I suppose Militao was pretty good, wasn't he, domestically?
I really like what Tomori did in that AC Milan title charge, but is that enough to get in this team? No, it's not really. I mean, you're right. Joe's right. There's not enough there's not enough truly standout people. And I can understand how Van Dijk's sort of snuck in there. We have to remember his form has more dropped off this season than it was last season.
But we've got to take that into account. From August to Christmas, when he played in the World Cup, and he was still pretty decent in the World Cup, but that, Liverpool have not been ripping up trees this season, have they? I think that selection is based on legacy of how amazing Van Dijk is as an individual, how high his ceiling has been in the past. It's a selection that, there isn't a standout centre-back who probably is the best centre-back in the world. On his day, it's probably Van Dijk.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, Cancelo was the other talking point that we wanted to speak about here, because for me, when you think about left-backs last season, the one I think that comes to mind all the time, Henry, is Theo Hernandez. He had an unbelievable season, not just with, obviously, AC Milan going on to win Serie A, but also making it to the final and contributing heavily as well in Qatar.
Yeah, he's really put himself on the map as the kind of standout attacking left back, certainly in world football. He scored one of the best goals you'll see, where he basically ran the entire pitch of AC Milan and scored in San Siro, which is pretty epic. And 16 goal contributions, World Cup final. I think it was his brother. Was it taking his place at the start? Got subbed in, and then never really looked back in that French defence. And particularly with sort of Koundé on the other side, he became that sort of outlet for France to really bomb down the wing. So I love Theo Hernandez. I think this guy's got an incredible ceiling, and over the last 12 months, I'm not really sure where he's put a foot wrong. Yes, he's had a bit of a tricky time with AC Milan this season, but the entire side have, I think, trying to come to terms with their title last season, combating kind of the changes in that league in general. They're now turning it around, and Theo Hernandez is part of that. I think he probably deserves to be there. I mean, Cancelo, it's kind of what we were saying earlier about Alisson. Cancelo is probably the best fullback in the world. Did he have the best season last year? I think it's hard to say. I would definitely be putting Theo Hernandez in there over Cancelo if given the opportunity.
Okay, well, let's move on to midfield. I think the front line we're all kind of happy with. I think it's hard to
even though you can't have that balance.
Sure, but that's what they've put it there for us. So we've got to kind of make the changes as we can. I think Messi, Benzema, Haaland, and Mbappe all kind of speak for themselves. The midfield: Casemiro, Modric, and De Bruyne.
Don't have huge problems with these. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a pretty solid midfield. I think Casemiro has had an amazing year. Obviously, didn't quite go to plan with Brazil, but won pretty much everything there is to win, other than the Copa del Rey at Real Madrid, and then has been unbelievable at Manchester United since joining, and we're all aware of that. Modric, again, an amazing World Cup. Just incredible what he's doing at his age. Again, won pretty much everything there is to win at Madrid. And De Bruyne, across, I think, 2022, was averaging a goal or an assist every 90 minutes, and the numbers are still absolutely frightening. 54 games, 18 goals, 27 assists from central midfield, and it's just like, it's De Bruyne again. I think the midfield's fine.
Do you not think maybe De Bruyne's World Cup kind of plays against him? Obviously, they didn't even get outside of the groups.
Not massively, because you look at looking across the other options. Your other options didn't necessarily smash it at the World Cup either. You might say some of the youngsters. You think of a player like Pedri, who has had an outstanding 2022 as one of the best young players in the world and really broken onto the top stage. Spain didn't rip it up at the World Cup, did they? Started well and then just fizzled out immediately. For me, I think De Bruyne is fine. Domestically, he was more than good enough to get in this too.
Yeah, that Belgian side was past it. I think people were worried about that going into.
De Bruyne was saying it, wasn't he?
And he literally, he made it very clear. So I'm not gonna be too hard on him in that regard. But I completely agree. Casemiro, the impact, you don't realise how good he is until almost necessarily, certainly in the English audience, until he's come to United, and you see just the balance and everything that he's given that side. I think his tackles and interception numbers for United in the first 6 months of this season have been ridiculous. He's been dominating in front of the back four, and Modric as well.
What a year!
Yeah, Modric, we're continuing to see it, and some of his passing in that Champions League run, certainly for Real Madrid, is once again just incredible. Timeless player. We saw the energy against Liverpool. I'm completely happy, and let's not forget Croatia had a great World Cup. Got to the semi-final again.
So you don't think it's harsh? Maybe Vinny Jr. didn't get
yeah.
Obviously, again, when you look at that front line,
they've picked 4 players: Mbappe, Haaland, Benzema, Messi. How do you drop one of them for Vinny?
Benzema's
which one are you dropping? Season. Which one would you drop for Vinny?
I wouldn't drop anyone.
Exactly,
it's tough. It's tough. But I do think I feel like Vinny can maybe feel a little bit hard done by in some way, shape or form.
Well, do you want to play a fifth up there, do you? And we'll drop Van Dijk.
By these rules, I think we can do what we like. But there we have it, guys. That is Football Daily's The Best Awards. Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? Would you make any other changes to the team or the nominations? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more Football Daily content, then click on screen right now. And as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.